What if, instead of Dagon being the curse spirit separated from the pack in Shibuya incident, and Hanami meeting her end at the hands of Satoru Gojo, the world's strongest? The two curses swapped places. Hanami, spirit of nature, would be up against Nanami, Naobito, Maki, eventually Megami, and perhaps even Toji. What kind of changes to the timeline does this small butterfly effect cause? And would Hanami be a much easier fight for the protagonist that doesn't leave them too damaged to deal with Jogo afterwards? Got my man Broken Ronin here to go ahead and help me figure out this scenario.
Yo, what's up everybody? Happy to be here.
All right, so Ronin, you kind of already know how we do things here. So what we're going to go ahead and do, because we're going to be placing Hanami in Dagon's place, fighting Nanami, Naobito, and Maki during Shibuya. Briefly, what we're going to explain is in order for Hanami to be there, we're going to need Dagon to be over here with Choso, Jogo, fighting Gojo. So just really quickly, just so we can make this all make sense, how do you feel like Dagon being in that scenario kind of changes things? We'll give Dagon his regular fighting form, not his, you know, cursed womb form, just to make things fair.
For sure. I think the Dagon, we have to assume that he also is going to have like the domain amplification, or else he's just going to get waxed, because domain amplification is the only really way that they can guarantee Gojo will not obliterate them. Like we see that Hanami's kind of downfall is they get cocky and they basically think that they can bring out their technique since Gojo has deactivated his. Really, the only main difference I could see, because Dagon is, at least for the purposes of going up against Gojo, is close enough in power to where to him it won't really matter. The biggest difference is, do you think Dagon is going to bring down his domain amplification? If so, he's getting folded exactly like Hanami did, maybe even easier, with Gojo basically saying, bring on the next one. If not, maybe the fight goes on for a little bit more before Mahito joins the fray. But basically everything goes down the same just because of Gojo's like overwhelming ability. You know what I mean? Gojo kind of makes everybody look equally weak in his presence.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not going to disagree that. I definitely think pretty much everything still goes the same way, with Gojo still needing to do his 0.2 domain expansion, eliminate all the transfigured humans, and eventually stun all of the cursed spirits. I do feel like, just to answer your question, at least from what I was able to infer with Dagon fighting against Nanami, Maki, and Naobito, is that it did seem like Dagon, despite being brand new and being born pretty much again in that fight, it seemed like he did have a little bit of combat intelligence, at least compared to someone like Hanami, whose basically whole character arc was they really didn't have much of a bloodlust, they didn't really have much of a battle sense, and they had to kind of learn that, right? Which is kind of, which I always think is poetic to where how Hanami actually eventually in the original timeline ended up dying, because Hanami, from everything that we can infer with Gege's interviews and what we've seen in power scaling, Hanami is one of the stronger disaster curse spirits. Even Gojo says so himself, that Hanami is one of the scarier curse spirits out of their group. But the problem with Hanami is Hanami doesn't necessarily know how to use this combat potential, and ultimately ends up, as you said, being her downfall, because they get cocky and they end up bringing down their domain amplification. I feel like Dagon would maybe be a little bit more intelligent enough to follow the strategy, but as you said before, I don't think that really makes much of a difference to Gojo, because Gojo, even with the domain amplification active, was still literally waxing them, folding them into little pieces of paper and putting them in his pocket. So like, exactly. I really don't think it's that big of a difference, and I think everything kind of stays the same. However, to get to the overall point and why we kind of did that small little song and dance for Dagon is ultimately to get Hanami in a position where they end up fighting Nanami, Naobito, and Maki, and Fushiguro down the long run, and Toji possibly, if we think that Hanami is able to get that far, which Lord help them. Either way, so before we get into domain expansion, because unfortunately we've never actually seen it from Hanami, so ultimately anything we say will overall be speculation on that part. But ultimately, when we're comparing base Hanami to the three sorcerers that they'll be facing today, how do we feel like Naobito, Maki, Nanami, how do we feel like they overall, maybe perhaps individually, do against Hanami?
So I honestly was thinking about this, right? And I was trying to envision how Hanami being placed there, what are the differences between Hanami and Dagon, and like how does that show up in the fight? And to be honest, I think they just get bodied more. Like, to be completely blunt with you, I think the biggest thing that you have to acknowledge is that Dagon is, no matter how you put it, he's basically tanking every single attack that doesn't directly come from Maki with Playful Cloud or Toji with Playful Cloud, right? You say, oh, well, Naobito was like punching him a lot and Dagon felt like he needed to open his domain. Reread that real quick for me, because like, I want you to show me the damage that's getting dealt. I promise you it's not nearly as extensive as you think, right? Dagon has to open his domain to hit Naobito, but it's not like he's taking that much damage. He outright tanks Nanami's ratio technique. Like, he just blocks it with his forearm. And Nanami goes on to say that it's like no damage. Actually, it's like he has limitless health points. It's like, bro, Dagon, right? The weakest and youngest of the cursed spirits is like absolutely just eating every single blow that they got, right? Hanami is probably the most durable outside of like maybe Mahito in his true form or whatever. So you have Hanami being able to out here like just tank or survive several Black Flashes from Yuji, a Playful Cloud combination from Toto, Playful Cloud from Maki, Divine Dog from Megami, all of these different attacks. Hanami's still standing, right? Hanami is probably just going to eat every single attack that gets thrown at them with almost zero difficulty. The biggest problem, like it was when the Dagon fight, is going to be Naobito, and it's not because of his strength, it's not because of anything besides his speed. His speed is really hard to deal with because Naobito should be faster than really all of the disaster cursed spirits, if we're being honest, but like specifically Hanami as well, and that's going to be the main thing. But honestly, and it depends on how wild you think Hanami's durability is relative to these guys' AP. Like, Hanami's probably just going to be summoning massive like forests of trees or whatever to separate them, or using the cursed buds to catch Naobito and Nanami off guard. Because imagine, right, they don't know Hanami's abilities. Toto, the super genius with a computer-like IQ, barely was able to figure out that the cursed buds absorb cursed energy, and that was only because he had seen them work on Megami before. Imagine Naobito gets hit with a cursed bud, or Nanami gets hit with a cursed bud, and now they can't use their cursed energy anymore because they tried to block with cursed energy and it's being drained. Like, Hanami could potentially take out the only fighter that is really worth their salt, and if that happens, no domain expansion necessary. Hanami just actually washes them.
Right. I feel like one thing that definitely needs to be honed in on, and we kind of, I kind of spoke about it a little bit before, was Hanami's inexperience with combat. As we see in their fight with Yuji and Toto, even towards the end of it, Hanami was starting to get the knack of everything and starting to be able to react to Boogie Woogie of all things, which we know even from Mahito's fight, who is a much more experienced fighter, probably one of the strongest disaster curses that we have in the family at that point, is having trouble reacting to it. One thing that I really want to hone in on for Hanami is their ability to adapt and their ability to grow, especially as they start to fight more and feel like they're starting to gain bloodlust and become an actual cursed spirit as opposed to just a natural spirit. Overall, in this fight, even if Naobito is able to perform some kind of crazy combo on them like they do to Dagon, or even if Nanami's ratio technique, if you want to be generous enough to say the ratio technique, is even able to really do critical damage to Hanami, which from the durability feats that we've kind of already talked about is kind of thrown into question. Hanami would just level up. Hanami would continually be evolving and be continually being able to grow her curse technique, would be able to really overcome any obstacle that they face in the battle. And as we kind of talked about, and you kind of touched on it, is their ability to just create overall forests, like Hashirama type stuff, right? Like able to literally create entire forests and split all of our fighters up and have them fight their own battles. Hanami, as we even see in their fight against Yuji and Toto, can just pop in and out of little flowers on the trees that they make. Like, they could literally go back and forth, split all three of those guys up, and literally take them all on individually. And as we just kind of talked about, it doesn't really seem like they'd have an easy time. It doesn't really seem like they really would be able to overcome that.
It would not be fun.
None of them would be having fun. So if Hanami really gets to that point where their combat ability does grow to, they kind of get a Zenkai boost, right? And they kind of do get put in that position where they have to grow and overcome these three people. As you mentioned before, even without domain expansion, it does seem like the odds change a lot. It does seem like the tables have turned. Even if we feel like Megami eventually does show up, right? Which, as we kind of already talked about, we feel like Hanami doesn't even really need to do a domain expansion to kind of achieve at least putting them in a bad position here. Do you feel like Fushiguro showing up would kind of change things?
So it really depends on the state that they're in, because I was just thinking about what are they going to do if Hanami throws out like the mentally weakening flowers, you know what I mean? The things that got Gojo. It's like Hanami just throws those out, takes out Maki or Nanami, right? Naobito may be a little bit less susceptible because he's stronger, maybe, right? But like immediately just boom, takes out 2 fighters, right? Now, if we think that everybody has survived, maybe with extensive damage up to this point, and then Megami pulls up ready to fight, a fresh Megami being added into this battle, maybe with Hanami being a little bit tired, probably not though. it does help because Megami is a strong fighter at this point, and his domain expansion is going to be essential in potentially countering Hanami's own. It doesn't really do what they need it to do, like because the big thing is the big thing with like Megami being so like key in the Dagon's domain is because Dagon had already spent the cursed energy to open one, meaning they would be able to get outside of it. Dagon would be weakened because of his domain, just like Megami, although to a lesser extent, and then they would all be able to jump him, right? Toji came in and messed that all up, but that was the initial plan. That was why Megami coming in was such like a big bonus, because it saved Nanami and Maki from just getting absolutely barraged by sure hit techniques that they had no hope of defending. Here though, Megami can be able to help, right? We see that Divine Dog can do damage to Hanami, but it's not a Black Flash from Yuji. It's not a Playful Cloud Strike from Todo. It's not a Playful Cloud Strike from Maki, right? It's really going to be bad. Like Megami will only be able to be a band-aid on the extensive wound that would be Hanami versus everyone here. I think the real thing that like changes the tide of this battle and that ends up making it quite a bit different is just Toji showing up. And I think we both agree it doesn't matter who Toji's up against here. He's waxing them. They're getting bodied. Hanami's gonna see Toji, and then Hanami's gonna see God. I feel like in spite of Hanami being extremely durable, I mean, we see Maki tear through Hanami's arm with Playful Cloud. I don't know if I want to see what happens when Toji wields it and swings it at Hanami. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 110% completely. Toji is going to be the saving grace here because, as you mentioned, Megami coming in, it was a key player for the Dagon fight because Dagon had already laid out his domain. As we've established, Hanami probably wouldn't need to lay out their domain in order to kind of take advantage of this fight here. One thing I also wanted to touch on before we get right into Toji, and I think it makes Megami even more so diminished, is just overall Hanami's control of the environment, right? Megami's whole thing is being able to summon a domain expansion, because I feel like Chimera Shadow Garden, I mean, despite the Hanami having their own domain, I feel like Chimera Shadow Garden would be something that they would try to get, but I think it would be funny to watch Megami's constant surroundings get changed because Hanami can keep creating and disappearing and just changing the environment around. I think that would be a really cool aspect of the fight. Now, while to bring that back into Toji, I feel like that does give Toji a little bit harder of a problem because Hanami is so capable of getting away from him by creating giant, vines and branches that can continually just expand and go forward and keep Toji away from them. I feel like overall, as we kind of touched on, is Toji's just pure carnage. Toji's pure carnage. Hold on. That was funny. All right. So I feel like Toji's pure carnage, just his pure overall destructive potential, would just be able to destroy every kind of massive forest that Hanami was able to create. Toji would really be out here just reshaping the map the same way that Sukuna did, because I feel like it really would be that not high stakes of a fight, but that large of a fight. Because Hanami would be trying everything that they would have in their disposal to keep Toji away from them, because I definitely don't think, from what we see Hanami handle when Gojo casts Hollow Purple, Hanami was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I feel like Hanami would probably feel that same kind of aura from Toji and be like, yeah, no, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And Toji would just be like, no, you aren't.
Toji, especially at this point in his like undead state, is going to be, his instincts are just going to be on point. Hanami is his target, and that's going to be his target until Hanami's gotten rid of. And I don't think that Hanami, like, in spite of being like very versatile and very mobile due to the tree manipulation or wood manipulation that they have, like, what's a tree branch to a playful Cloud plus Toji? You know what I mean? He just starts swinging and things start breaking. And I feel like eventually one of them is going to catch Hanami, and Hanami's just going to get caught in the meanest combo that Toji has ever brought out. And that would basically spell defeat for Hanami at that point in the series. I mean, even if you think, okay, Hanami hasn't brought out their domain expansion yet, they bring it out now, right? It doesn't matter to Toji. I mean, we know that Toji is immune to barriers and domains, so he's gonna just walk right up. Hanami's gonna be confused as to why their sure hit technique is not surely hitting Toji, and then Toji is going to bonk them on the head until they stop moving. Like, that's going to be the fight. So even in the best case scenario for Hanami, they get away, they create some space, they open their domain, thinking that they're gonna catch him. Doesn't affect Toji. Toji's gonna wash.
As far as it stands in this way of the timeline, I completely agree with your statement that it definitely does get a lot harder for our protagonist to deal with Hanami. Hanami is definitely a much larger threat to the trio that are initially there, and even with Megami showing up, just because of the way that Megami's domain, at least in its original timeline way of being used with Dagon, it was used in a tug of war. It was able to use Dagon's barrier. As we know, like, and as I mentioned before, with Hanami's ability to change the environment around and just overall like forest creation, Hashirama, Megami has no chance of using his trump card. You could say that Megami feels that, all right, I need to bring out Maharaga in this instance because we know he's just so gun happy trigger to like to pull that out. He loves like being like, all right, this is it, I have to do it.
Time to die, I guess.
Which obviously Maharaga, whether it's Dagon, whether it's Hanami, obviously we don't even need to talk about that because obviously
Jesus, it's bad. Hanami gets one shot, you know what I mean?
Exactly. That doesn't make a difference. As we talked about, unless Megami either summons Maharaga, he's not contributing anything to the fight or really helping them. Their sole saving grace is Toji showing up and doing what he does best and taking out Hanami. And that's one of the two ways that this goes. Hopefully, by the way of keeping Megami alive, we can just pray that Toji shows up before Megami gets ready to cast seppuku.
Yeah. Hopefully Toji's fatherly instincts, if he ever had any, will come in handy here.
They'll kick in. He'll remember his name and be like, oh shit, I gotta go. But yeah, I mean, I think that's everything that we could possibly talk about this. Hanami switching with Dagon doesn't really change much overall in the timeline unless Megami ends up summoning Maharaga before Toji shows up. But overall, I thought that'd be a really interesting discussion to have. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you so much to Broken Ronin for partaking in this. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, no, always fun to have you guys. If you haven't already, make sure you go to subscribe to his channel. He makes awesome Jujutsu Kaisen content, among other anime and manga content as well. We have a lot of collab battles that we do very often on my channel as well as his. So if you're not subscribed to his channel, then you're missing half of the content. I appreciate all you guys for watching. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of the week. Peace.